Hello there. It's me, Clyde. I'm very glad you're here. Before we begin tonight's very important task, which is counting icicles on a palace roof in St. Petersburg, I want to gently remind you to like this video and subscribe. Right now, before you get too cozy and forget. You can do it now. I'll wait. Good. That way, once you drift off, perhaps somewhere around icicle number 47, you won't wake up tomorrow thinking, oh no. I meant to subscribe to the man who counts frozen water in historical settings. Also, if you enjoy these very uneventful adventures, I have a playlist filled with all of them. Every boring expedition, every extended pause, every deeply unnecessary observation about architectural trim. And if you become a channel member, not only do you help support these calm wanderings through time, but I'll create a personalized, sleepy story just for you. A custom tale where absolutely nothing alarming happens. Now, let's begin. Tonight, I find myself in St. Petersburg, sometime in the late 18th century. The air is so cold it feels solid, not painful, just decisive. I'm standing in the courtyard of a palace so ornate it looks slightly offended by winter. Snow rests along its carved edges and golden flourishes. Frost grips the balustrades. Windows glow amber behind thick glass, where candlelight trembles and servants move like shadows. And above me, icicles. Rows and rows of them. They hang from the palace roofline like crystal organ pipes. Some long and elegant, some stubby and impatient, some curved as if reconsidering gravity. They drip, slowly. Each droplet forms, hesitates, considers its life choices, and then falls. One falls now. It strikes the frozen stone courtyard with a sharp, unexpected crack, louder than you'd think. It echoes. A palace guard turns his head. A horse snorts near the gate. Somewhere, a small white dog wearing a ribbon barks at nothing in particular, and I realize I should begin counting. 1, 2, 3. A carriage rolls past outside the iron gates. Its wheels creak against packed snow. Inside might be a minor nobleman, or perhaps someone pretending to be one. St. Petersburg is full of such hopeful men in powdered wigs. The year, I believe, is somewhere during the reign of Catherine the Great. Catherine is likely inside this very palace, drafting letters to philosophers, expanding the Russian Empire, reorganizing provincial governance, and possibly wondering why the roofline hasn't been cleared of ice. She corresponded with Voltaire, you know. I once tried writing to Voltaire myself, but I never mailed it. It mostly contained questions about pastry. Icicle 4 drips again. 4, 5, 6. A groom walks across the courtyard, leading a tall grey horse. The horse exhales steam into the night air, its breath curling upward like a ghost reconsidering its haunting schedule. 7, 8. There's a man standing near the palace entrance with a large fur hat that appears to have ambitions of its own. It's taller than seems necessary. Perhaps it houses small secrets. 9, 10. One of the icicles bends slightly under its own weight. I admire that. There is dignity in persistence. The Neva River flows not far from here, partially frozen. Merchants still attempt trade along its banks. Soldiers march in measured rhythm. Architects debate French versus Italian influence while stamping their feet for warmth. And here I am, counting. 11, 12. A servant opens an upper window briefly and tosses out a small bucket of something I do not investigate too closely. It lands in the snow with a soft thud. 13, 14. A cat emerges from beneath a stone bench. Gray, wide-eyed, offended by winter. It stares at me as though I personally invented frost. I nod politely. 15, 16. Another icicle snaps free. It falls, shatters. The sound ricochets off marble and gilded columns. It is very satisfying. 17. You might be wondering why I'm counting them. That's a fair question. The answer is, I arrived a bit early for dinner. Also, when you're a time traveler, hypothetically speaking, it is wise to appear occupied. People are less suspicious of a man counting icicles than of a man staring vaguely at imperial architecture while humming to himself. 18, 19, 20. Inside the palace, preparations are underway. Catherine has been modernizing Russia, reorganizing administration, encouraging arts, inviting foreign scholars. The Enlightenment has reached this snowy empire, albeit wearing several layers of fur. I once overheard a debate in a court about agricultural reform that lasted 3 hours and ended with everyone politely disagreeing. 21, 22. The palace roof gleams faintly in moonlight. The icicles shimmer like chandeliers installed by winter itself. A small boy carrying firewood slips slightly on the ice, recovers, and pretends nothing happened. I respect that deeply. 23. 24. I pause to warm my hands in my sleeves. Snow drifts downward again. Light, dry, almost thoughtful. A violin begins playing somewhere inside. Soft, measured. Perhaps a rehearsal for an evening gathering. Perhaps simply someone practicing scales while contemplating empire. 25. 26. I consider whether icicles are nature's hourglasses. They grow, they drip, they fall. Time, frozen briefly, then released. 27, 28. A palace official steps outside to inspect the courtyard. He looks up at the roof, at me, at the roof again. I smile and nod as if I have been officially appointed imperial counter of icicles. He shrugs and retreats indoors. 29. 30. The white dog with the ribbon reappears and barks at an icicle. Bold, unwise. 31. 32. I wonder how many icicles have existed in the history of this palace. Thousands. Millions. Does anyone keep records? Should I? 33. 34. Another drip forms slowly, trembling at the tip of a long, slender spike. It falls. 35. And we are only just beginning. Settle in. There are many more to count, and I suspect at least one of them is planning something dramatic. But for now, 36, 37, 38. We'll continue in just a moment. 39, 40, 41. I've repositioned myself slightly to improve my counting angle. One must commit to accuracy when undertaking such noble pursuits. The palace roof curves outward in elaborate flourishes. Decorative cornice, carved stone cherubs who now wear small snow caps, and gilded trim dulled by frost. 42, 43. An icicle here is not merely frozen water. It is a structural commentary, a seasonal accessory, a glittering addendum to imperial ambition. 44, 45. St. Petersburg was, of course, carved from marshland by Peter the Great, who decided this swampy, mosquito-rich landscape would be the window to Europe. A bold choice, especially in winter. 46, 47. The Neva River breathes slowly beyond the palace walls. Trade ships freeze in place. Men walk carefully across its thickening ice. Fishermen test holes with long poles and optimistic expressions. 48, 49. Inside this palace, Catherine continues reshaping Russia. She supports the arts. She expands the empire southward. She reorganizes provinces into more efficient districts. Somewhere in a heated chamber, advisors debate taxation policies while sipping tea. 50, 51. Meanwhile, I'm engaged in perhaps the most stable government project of the evening, counting icicles. 52, 53. A palace servant exits with a tray of pastries. He pauses to admire the snow before being startled by another icicle snapping loose. It falls, shatters. He jumps. The pastries wobble, but heroically remain upright. 54, 55. A crow lands on the roofline, examines one particularly ambitious icicle, and pecks at it experimentally. The icicle does not appreciate this. It drips more aggressively. 56, 57. The crow caws, offended, and flies away to find less argumentative architecture. 58, 59. I step closer to the palace wall. Snow crunches beneath my boots. The air smells faintly of smoke from chimneys, horse leather, and something savory drifting from the kitchens. 60, 61. A carriage arrives. The horses are decorated with small silver fittings that glint in torchlight. A noblewoman emerges, her breath forming clouds as she adjusts her fur-lined hood. She glances upward, at the icicles, at me. Our eyes meet briefly. I nod in professional solidarity. 62, 63. One icicle near the center has grown unusually long. It extends like a frozen spear, tapering to a delicate point. 64, 65. I suspect it will be the dramatic one. 66, 67. Snowflakes drift lazily now, catching in my hair and cloak. The palace lights flicker against the falling snow, and for a moment, the entire courtyard feels suspended. Like a painting someone forgot to finish. 68, 69. There is a goat. I did not expect the goat. But there it is, tethered near a side entrance, possibly intended for milk. Possibly wandering where it should not, it chews calmly, unimpressed by imperial grandeur. 70, 71. The goat sneezes. 72, 73. Inside, music grows louder. A harpsichord joins the violin. Boots shuffle on polished floors. Perhaps there is a gathering tonight. Scholars, officers, foreign diplomats attempting to understand Russian winters. 74, 75. One diplomat will certainly underestimate the cold and spend the evening pretending not to shiver. 76, 77. A palace guard stamps his boots to stay warm. His mustache has gathered frost at the edges. He watches the icicles with suspicion, as though they are conspirators. 78, 79. Another drip. 80. The long spear-shaped icicle trembles slightly. I lean back a little, just in case. 81, 82. I consider how many winters this palace has endured. Snow piling year after year, ice forming, ice falling, repairs made, repairs postponed, empires expanding while icicles grow and shrink in quiet cycles. 83, 84. A small sled slides past outside the gate, pulled by two children laughing far too loudly for such cold air. 85, 86. The dramatic icicle bends again. 87, 88. A crack forms. 89. It falls. It strikes the stone with an explosive crack that echoes across the courtyard like a musket shot. The goat startles. The guard flinches. A window upstairs opens briefly, then closes. 90. There is something deeply satisfying about a completed icicle. It lived, it dripped, it fell, and I counted it. 91. 92. We are making excellent progress. I brush snow from my shoulder and look upward again. There are still dozens left, perhaps more. Perhaps I miscounted at 43. That is always possible. 93, 94. The night grows deeper. The music inside swells. And I remain here, counting 95, 96, 97. Let's continue. Carefully, one drip at a time. 98, 99, 100. There is something deeply reassuring about reaching 100. It feels official, documented, as though somewhere in a dusty imperial ledger, a clerk might record Icicles, 100. Condition, moderately dramatic, 101. 102. The palace doors open again. This time not for pastries or minor nobility, but for a brisk man in a deep blue coat trimmed in fur. His boots move with purpose. His eyebrows move with even more purpose. He steps into the courtyard and looks upward, directly at the icicles, then at the shattered remnants of the long spear-shaped one, then at me. 103, 104. He approaches. "Are you responsible for this?" he asks in Russian that carries the tone of someone who manages other people's inconveniences. I gesture upward gently. "I'm documenting them," I say, which is technically true. He blinks. 105, 106. He explains, somewhat urgently, that several visiting officials are arriving tonight, including representatives from newly reorganized provinces. Catherine has recently restructured regional governance to improve efficiency, and tonight's gathering is meant to impress. Icicles falling onto important boots would not be ideal. 107, 108. I nod gravely, as though I have always understood my role in imperial logistics. 109. He asks how many remain. I glance upward. 109, I reply confidently. He considers this, then gestures toward a ladder leaning against the side of the building. 110. The goat watches closely. 111. The official suggests that perhaps I might assist. And so, as snow continues drifting gently down, I find myself climbing a palace ladder in 18th century St. Petersburg. This was not on my itinerary. 112, 113. Up close, the icicles are magnificent, clear and layered like frozen pages of a book written by gravity. Some are thick and opaque at the top, tapering into delicate glass-like ends. 114. I tap one gently with a gloved finger. It hums faintly, not in any mystical way, just in a frozen water vibrates way. 115. Below, the official calls instructions. The guard shields his eyes from falling snow. The goat has repositioned itself for optimal viewing. 116. I gently nudge an icicle loose. It falls, shatters harmlessly in the snow. The official nods in approval. 117. Another. 118. The palace windows glow warmly behind me. Inside I can see movement, silk dresses, powdered wigs, flickering chandeliers. 119. 120. A woman at a second-story window pauses to watch me dislodge imperial ice. We share a brief look of mutual understanding. She closes the curtain. 121. 122. It is oddly peaceful up here. The Neva stretches silver in the distance. Church domes rise against the twilight sky. Smoke curls from chimneys. Sleigh bells ring faintly beyond the gates. 123. 124. I overhear snippets of conversation drifting from an open vent below. Discussions of educational reform, military supply lines, grain distribution. Catherine's Russia is changing, expanding southward toward the Black Sea, modernizing, competing with European powers. And here I am, managing frozen water. 125, 126. Another icicle snaps free unexpectedly. It nearly takes my hat. I recover gracefully, mostly. 127. 128. A palace servant below applauds quietly. I bow slightly from the ladder, careful not to lose balance. 129. 130. The official seems satisfied. The most threatening icicles have been cleared. The remainder hangs smaller, less ambitious. 131. 132. I descend carefully. The ladder creaks in dramatic protest but holds. Back on the courtyard stone, the official thanks me, formally now, and presses a small pastry into my hand as compensation. It is filled with something warm and sweet. 133. I take a bite. Cinnamon. Unexpected, but welcome. 134. The goat attempts to sample the pastry as well. I decline politely. 135. The official returns indoors, reassured that visiting dignitaries will not be impaled by architecture. The guard relaxes. The music swells again inside the palace, and I resume my position. 136. 137. The icicles now are shorter, softer, less theatrical. Snow continues falling. 138. 139. 140. My breath curls into the night air. My boots leave careful prints in the snow. The courtyard feels quieter now, steadier. Inside, empire shifts. Outside, water freezes. 141. 142. The goat lies down in the snow, apparently satisfied with the evening's events. 143. 144. A small boy from earlier returns with a sled. He stops and asks what I am doing. Counting, I reply. He nods as though this explains everything, and perhaps it does. 145. 146. The night deepens. The palace glows, the icicles drip, and I remain. Counting. 147. 148. 149. We still have quite a few left. Let's keep going, slowly, carefully. No rush at all. 150. 151. The ladder has been removed now. The most dangerous icicles are gone, and what remains are smaller, more modest formations, little frozen commas hanging from the palace roof. 152. 153. The courtyard grows busier. Carriages continue to arrive. Sleigh bells chime softly in the distance. Snow gathers in delicate ridges along the steps and railings. 154, 155. A servant reappears. Not the pastry one, a different one, with flushed cheeks and a hurried expression. He approaches me cautiously, as if uncertain whether I am part of the official staff or simply a man who wandered in and became useful, which is not entirely inaccurate. 156. He informs me that the gentleman in the blue coat, the one with purposeful eyebrows, has mentioned my assistance. Apparently, I've been described as helpful and calm in matters of falling ice. I take this as a compliment. 157, 158. The servant gestures toward the entrance. There is a suggestion that I might warm myself indoors. Briefly, just until the next course of the evening meal is announced. 159, 160. I hesitate. Not because I dislike warmth, but because leaving mid-count feels irresponsible. Still, frost has begun collecting along the edge of my sleeve. 161, 162. The goat watches me expectantly, as though I must choose between civic duty and pastry refills. I decide I can continue counting from the doorway. It is, after all, a wide doorway. 163, 164. Inside, the palace air wraps around me like a sigh. Candles flicker in tall brass holders. Chandeliers glow with dozens of flames reflected in polished mirrors. The marble floors gleam. Music swells. Violin, harpsichord, perhaps even a cello humming softly beneath it all. 165. 166. Guests cluster in small conversational constellations. Silk skirts whisper against the floor. Military uniforms gleam with medals. Wigs tower with architectural ambition rivaling the roofline outside. I stand just inside the entrance, snow melting quietly from my cloak. 167. 168. A footman offers me a small cup of something warm. I accept. Steam curls upward, scented faintly with cloves and citrus. I continue looking out through the doorway. 169. 170. From here, I can still see the icicles along the far wing of the palace. The courtyard glows in lantern light. Snow drifts gently downward, unbothered by reform policies. 171. 172. I overhear a conversation nearby about new educational institutions Catherine intends to establish. She's attempting to modernize Russia's schooling system, influenced by Enlightenment ideas from Western Europe. One gentleman argues that structured education will strengthen the empire. Another worries it will encourage too much thinking. 173. 174. A lady with an elaborate feathered headpiece asks me if I am attached to the architectural staff. I'm attached to the Icicles, I reply honestly. She nods as if this makes perfect sense. 175. 176. At the far end of the hall, I glimpse a figure surrounded by advisors. A presence more than a person. Confident posture, measured gestures. Catherine herself. She laughs at something an officer says. The sound carries clearly across the room. Steady, deliberate, intelligent. 177. 178. It occurs to me that while she reorganizes provinces and negotiates foreign alliances, outside the palace, Winter quietly rearranges water molecules. Both are forms of governance in their own way. 179. 180. A small spaniel trots across the marble floor, sliding slightly before regaining composure. Its ears bounce indignantly. It sniffs my boot, then decides I am insufficiently interesting. 181. 182. I sip the warm drink. It tastes like orange peel and distant sunshine. Outside, another icicle trembles. 183. 184. A faint crack echoes from the courtyard. The guests barely notice, but I do. 185. 186. I feel an odd satisfaction knowing that I'm still keeping track, even from inside. 187. 188. The servant who invited me indoors returns and whispers that the visiting provincial officials have arrived safely. No injuries. No dramatic ice-related incidents. I nod gravely. 189. 190. Music swells into a lively piece. Several couples begin a formal dance. Precise steps, controlled movements, gliding turns. The rhythm is steady, like dripping water. 191. 192. I consider how history will remember this evening. Diplomatic progress, perhaps a new decree drafted tomorrow, another inch of influence stretching across maps. But no one will record the Icicles. 193. 194. The door opens briefly as another guest arrives. Cold air rushes in. Snowflakes swirl across the threshold. 195. 196. I finish the warm drink and step back toward the courtyard. Duty calls. 197. 198. The night greets me again with crystalline silence. The goat lifts its head. 199, 200, 200. We have reached 200. The palace glows behind me. The Neva glimmers in the distance. And still, there are more to count. We continue, slowly, with no rush at all. 201, 202. The courtyard feels different now. Warmer behind me from the palace glow, colder in front of me where the Neva exhales its frozen breath into the night. 203, 204. The dance music inside shifts to something slower. A waltz, perhaps. Though waltzing in Russia at this time is still a topic of debate. Some consider it too intimate, too scandalous. Imagine, concerned about the closeness of dancing, while entire empires reposition themselves across continents. 205, 206. The snow has thickened slightly, not aggressively, just enough to soften edges. The shattered icicle fragments are already losing definition, dissolving into white anonymity. 207, 208. A palace guard rotates shifts. The new guard is taller, younger. His boots are slightly too large, judging by the sound they make when he walks. 209, 210. He looks up, I look up. We share a silent understanding. He will guard, I will count. 211, 212. Across the courtyard, near the far colonnade, I notice a pair of men unloading crates from a sleigh. Their breath clouds the air as they work methodically. Supplies for the kitchens, perhaps, or documents, or new fabrics imported from France. Catherine admires French culture, after all. Corresponds with philosophers, imports ideas like others import silk. 213, 214. One of the men drops a crate. It thuds. No one reacts dramatically. 215, 216. I tilt my head slightly to examine a cluster of shorter icicles forming along the eastern wing. They are not particularly ambitious. Modest drippers. Steady. 217, 218. A sudden gust of wind sweeps across the courtyard, carrying snow sideways in a brief flurry. The palace lamps flicker slightly. A window upstairs closes more firmly. 219, 220. The goat has disappeared. This concerns me slightly. 221, 222. Ah, there it is. Standing atop a low stone bench, attempting to nibble at a decorative evergreen garland tied along the balustrade. I admire its determination. 223, 224. Inside the palace, I hear laughter. Deeper now. Perhaps Catherine has made a remark. She was known for wit, for sharp intelligence, for carefully chosen words that cut more cleanly than any falling icicle. 225, 226. Snow accumulates on my shoulders again. I brush it off gently, though part of me considers allowing it to remain, becoming slightly more statue-like. 227, 228. A small procession of officers crosses the courtyard, boots crunching in unison. Their uniforms gleam faintly in lantern light. They speak quietly of southern campaigns, of the Black Sea, of borders shifting like drifting snowbanks. 229, 230. Empires expand. Water freezes. 231, 232. One icicle near the far edge quivers. I watch it carefully. It sways just enough to make the guard glance upward. 233, 234. It holds. For now. 235, 236. I notice something else now. The sound. Beyond the music. Beyond the sleigh bells. Beyond boots and muffled laughter. There is a steady rhythm. Drip. Pause. Drip. Pause. It echoes faintly against marble and snow. 237. 238. The sound is almost meditative. Each droplet marks time more honestly than any grand clock. 239. 240. I close my eyes briefly, just to listen. Drip. Pause. Drip. 241. 242. When I open them again, the courtyard seems quieter, as if winter itself has settled into a comfortable chair. A stray cat, perhaps the same gray one from earlier, pads across the snow, leaving delicate prints that will vanish by morning. 243. 244. A distant church bell rings somewhere beyond the palace grounds. Slow. Measured. It carries across the frozen city. 245. 246. The icicle that trembled earlier finally gives way. It falls cleanly. Strikes snow, barely a sound this time. 247. 248. I consider how differently ice sounds depending on where it lands. Stone makes it dramatic. Snow makes it forgiving. 249. 250. 250. We have reached 250. A satisfying number. Round. Complete. Though clearly not finished. The palace doors open again briefly. Warmth spills outward. A burst of music escapes and then retreats as the door closes. 251. 252. The young guard shifts his weight and glances toward the city skyline. In the distance, domes rise faintly in moonlight. St. Isaac's Cathedral still under construction in these years, evolving slowly like the empire itself. 253. 254. I imagine the architects debating proportions while snow accumulates on unfinished stone. 255. 256. The courtyard grows still again. Snow softens sound. Light glows. Icicles drip. 257. 258. I tuck my hands into my sleeves for warmth and continue. Slowly. Steadily. As winter rearranges the edges of the world around me. 259. 260. We continue. 261. 262. The wind has changed its mind. It no longer drifts politely from the north. It now sweeps sideways across the courtyard, lifting fine snow from the ground and carrying it in low silver sheets that skim across the stone. 263. 264. My cloak presses gently against my legs. The lantern flames along the palace wall, lean in unison like synchronized dancers who suddenly remembered they are outside. 265. 266. An icicle near the central arch has grown thicker since I first began. It has layered itself carefully, drip upon drip, patient and methodical. 267. 268. Patience is something Catherine understands well. Her ascent to power was not gentle, not simple. Empires rarely are. 269. 270. Inside those warm rooms behind me, ministers debate strategy while snow composes its own quiet policy on the roofline. 271. 272. The young guard clears his throat and adjusts his gloves. He appears to be thinking about something that is either profound or entirely about soup. 273, 274. Across the courtyard, the sledding children have returned. They pause to examine the shattered icicle remnants near the steps. One of them holds up a piece like a trophy. 275, 276. It catches lantern light and glows briefly before melting in his mittened hand. 277, 278. Snow gathers along the balustrade in soft ridges. The goat has resumed its perch, though now it stares upward at the roof with what I can only describe as personal suspicion. 279. 280. A new sound rises in the distance, faint at first. Hooves. Multiple. Measured. 281. 282. A small mounted patrol passes along the far edge of the palace grounds. Russia's military presence remains constant, expanding, fortifying, reorganizing. 283. 284. They disappear into snowfall. The courtyard settles again. 285. 286. One icicle begins dripping faster than the others. An overachiever. 287. 288. Drip. 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 It falls. Shatters. 289. 290. I brush snow from my shoulder and look upward again. There are fewer now. Noticeably fewer. 291. 292. It is strange how something that once seemed abundant can gradually thin out without ceremony. 293. 294. From inside the palace comes the swell of applause. Perhaps a toast has been made. Perhaps Catherine has announced a reform or delivered one of her carefully structured remarks. 295. 296. The wind calms. For a moment. And in that stillness, I hear something delicate. Not dripping. Breathing. Mine. The guards. The quiet city beyond. 297. 298. A distant bell tolls again. Slower now. Later. 299. 300. 300. We have reached 300, a satisfying milestone. The snow seems to approve. 301. 302. The icicles now hang shorter and less dramatic. They are thoughtful, almost shy. 303. 304. A palace servant emerges briefly to shake a rug over the railing. Snow flurries downward. He nearly slips. Recovers. Pretends nothing happened. 305. 306. I imagine someone inside is describing a map, tracing borders with a gloved finger. Meanwhile, winter traces its own borders along stone and roof. 307. 308. A cat reappears, weaving silently between columns. It pauses beneath the largest remaining icicle and tilts its head. 309. 310. The icicle wavers. The cat waits. 311. 312. It holds. The cat loses interest and walks away, dignity intact. 313. 314. I stretch my fingers slowly inside my sleeves. The air bites slightly sharper now. 315. 316. Across the frozen river, lights flicker in distant buildings. Merchants conclude business. Candles burn low. Russia continues existing in all its complexity. 317. 318. And here I remain, counting. 319. 320. There are perhaps 20 left, maybe fewer. 321. 322. The palace doors open once more, and warm air brushes my back like a reminder that history is unfolding indoors. 323. 324. But winter is unfolding here. 325. 326. The longest remaining icicle trembles gently. Snow drifts around it. 327. 328. It drops. Cleanly. Softly. 329. 330. 330. We are nearing completion. The courtyard feels lighter, quieter, almost relieved. 331. 332. Just a handful now. Drip. Pause. Drip. 333. 334. I take one slow breath and continue, unhurried, as the night leans gently toward its final hours. 335. 336. There are only a few now. They hang along the far edge of the roofline, modest, delicate, almost embarrassed to still be present. 337. 338. The wind has quieted completely. It is the kind of stillness that feels deliberate, as though the entire courtyard has agreed to lower its voice. 339. 340. The palace windows glow more softly now. Some candles have burned lower. Some guests have likely departed. Others remain deep in conversation about grain routes and alliances. 341. 342. The young guard shifts his stance again, though now his movements are slower. The evening has stretched long. His boots leave steady impressions in the snow. 343. 344. I look up at the remaining icicles. They are shorter, thinner. Their drips are less frequent. 345. 346. One droplet forms slowly at the tip of the nearest one. It swells, trembles, holds. 347. 348. It falls. This time the sound is barely there. Snow receives it gently. 349. 350. 350. The number sits comfortably in the air. Round, complete, but still not entirely finished. 351. 352. Across the river, faint lantern lights move along the embankment. A cart rolls slowly over packed snow. Somewhere, a baker rises early to begin kneading dough before dawn. 353. 354. History rarely pauses, even when ice does. 355. 356. I notice something now, the way the palace roof looks without its long dramatic formations. Simpler, cleaner, as though winter has edited itself. 357. 358. A final cluster remains near the corner tower. 3 of them, small, determined. 359. 360. The cat has curled into a tight gray circle near a column, tail tucked around itself. The goat has given up entirely and lies half buried in snow, eyes closed. 361. 362. The music inside the palace has faded to a softer melody. Perhaps the evening is winding down. 363. 364. I step closer to the final cluster, careful not to disturb them prematurely. 365. 366. The first of the 3 drops without warning. It lands in snow with a sigh. 367. 368. The second holds longer. Drip. Pause. Drip. 369. 370. It falls. A slightly firmer sound this time. It strikes a thin patch of stone beneath the snow. 371. 372. The last one remains. Small, almost transparent. 373. 374. I watch it closely. There is no rush. The palace glows behind me. The river glimmers ahead. The night breathes. 375. 376. The icicle thins at its neck. A crack, faint, almost polite. 377. 378. It drops. And this time, it does not shatter dramatically. It simply settles into the snow. Gone. 379. 380. 380, and that appears to be all of them. I look up at the roofline, bare. Just stone and snow now, no glittering edges, no suspended drips, just quiet. 381, 382. I realize I've continued counting even after the last one fell. Habit, 383, 384. The courtyard feels lighter now, emptier, but not lonely. 385, 386. The guard nods toward me, a silent acknowledgement that the task, whatever it was, has been completed. 387, 388. Inside, the final guests begin departing. Carriage doors close softly. Sleigh bells jingle faintly as wheels turn away from the palace. 389, 390. The snow continues falling, though more gently now. As if applauding, 391, 392. I stand there for a moment longer, breathing in the cold, listening to the quiet. And then, very slowly, I reach into my coat pocket. My fingers close around the smooth palm-sized stone. It is cool at first, then warmer, and then, very faintly, it begins to hum. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to suggest that perhaps it is time, but I do not leave immediately. I take one more look at the palace roof, at the empty ledge where 380 icicles once hung, at the snow-covered courtyard, at the sleeping goat, at the cat, at the young guard stamping his boots one last time. And I smile, because there will always be something to count. Somewhere, in some century. If you enjoyed this very necessary work of icicle documentation, don't forget to explore the playlist of my other wonderfully uneventful adventures. And if you become a channel member, I would be delighted to create a personalized sleepy journey just for you. For now, the stone hums softly in my palm and winter fades. Until next time,